The call came at 3:17 a.m. I still remember the exact time because my phone slipped from my hand and hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. The vibration echoed in the silent apartment like a warning, the kind that tells you life is about to split into before and after. Mr. Ethan Cole? Yes? This is St. Vincent Medical Center. I'm sorry to inform you. I didn't hear the rest properly. My ears started ringing, my chest tightened, and for a few seconds the world felt unreal, like I was watching my own life through a cracked glass window. My father, Richard Cole, was dead. Richard Cole wasn't just my father. He was a billionaire, a man who built an empire from nothing, a name that made politicians careful and businessmen nervous. And now, he was gone. By sunrise, every major news channel was screaming the headline, "Billionaire tycoon Richard Cole dies at 62, leaves behind a $1 billion empire." They showed his photos, sharp suit, silver hair, cold, confident smile. The man the world respected. The man I barely knew. To the media, he was a visionary CEO of Cole International Holdings, energy, real estate, private defense contracts, offshore investments. To me, he was the father who never was home, the man who missed birthdays, graduations, and my mother's funeral, the man who replaced love with money. 3 days later, the funeral ended. Black suits, fake tears, business rivals pretending to mourn. I stood silent beside the grave, hands in my pockets, staring at the coffin lowering into the ground. That's when Jonathan Myers, my father's personal lawyer for 25 years, leaned toward me. "Ethan," he whispered, "the reading of the will is tomorrow morning. You should prepare yourself." Something in his tone felt off. The next morning, I entered a private conference room at Myers & Goldstein law firm. Already seated, Margaret Cole, my stepmother, perfectly dressed, eyes sharp like a hawk. Daniel Cole, my half-brother, smirking as usual. Sophia Cole, my stepsister, quiet but observant. 2 unknown men in expensive suits, and Jonathan Myers, holding a thick black folder. Jonathan cleared his throat. "This is the last will and testament of Richard Cole." The room went silent. Jonathan began. "To my wife, Margaret Cole, I leave the New York penthouse and personal accounts totaling $50 million. Margaret nodded slightly. She expected more. "To my son, Daniel Cole, I leave my shares in Cole Defense Systems, valued at $120 million. Daniel's smile widened. Then Jonathan paused. "To my daughter, Sophia Cole, I leave overseas investments and trusts totaling $80 million. Sophia looked stunned. My heart pounded. Then came my name. Jonathan adjusted his glasses. "To my son, Ethan Cole, I leave all remaining assets, including controlling shares of Cole International Holdings, offshore accounts, properties, patents, and liquid assets. Total estimated value, $1 billion. The room exploded. Margaret stood up. "That's impossible." Daniel slammed the table. "This is a joke, right?" Sophia stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. And I couldn't breathe. Jonathan raised his hand. "There is a condition." Everyone froze. Jonathan continued. "Ethan Cole will receive full control of the inheritance only after 1 year, provided he fulfills all conditions mentioned in a sealed document left by Richard Cole." My father had planned this. Even from the grave, he was still controlling us. Jonathan slid a sealed envelope toward me, written on it, in my father's handwriting, "If you're reading this, son, I'm already dead." My hands trembled as I picked it up. Margaret's eyes burned with hatred. Daniel looked ready to kill me. And deep inside, I felt something worse than fear. I felt that my father's death wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a war. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. My father's handwriting stared back at me, sharp, controlled, emotionless. The same handwriting that signed contracts worth hundreds of millions. The same hand that never once wrote me a birthday card. I broke the seal. Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm already dead, and that means you finally have my full attention. I swallowed hard. You probably think I didn't love you. You're wrong. I simply didn't trust the world enough to love loudly. Power changes people. Money exposes them. And blood? Blood reveals monsters. The air in the room felt thick. I could sense everyone watching me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for weakness. There are things you don't know about your family, about your mother, about me. This inheritance is not a gift, it's a test. My jaw tightened. For 1 year, you will not sell, transfer, or delegate majority control of the company. You will sit in my chair, you will face my enemies, and you will learn why I never slept peacefully. I looked up. Jonathan was pale. Margaret's nails were digging into her palm. Daniel's eyes were locked on the letter like it was a death sentence. If you fail, the letter continued, everything goes to charity. Every dollar, every asset. The Cole name dies with me. I folded the letter slowly. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. My father didn't leave me $1 billion. He left me a battlefield. The first attack came sooner than expected. 2 days later, I walked into Cole International headquarters for the first time as acting chairman. The building was glass and steel, 47 floors of power overlooking Manhattan. Employees stopped talking when I passed. Some nodded respectfully, others stared with open doubt. In the elevator, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You don't belong here. Walk away while you can. I didn't reply. The boardroom was already full. Men and women twice my age, faces trained to hide intent. Daniel sat across from me, relaxed, confident. Margaret stood near the window, pretending not to watch me. The meeting started cold. We need to discuss the stock drop, one board member said. News of Richard's death has shaken investor confidence. Another added, some partners are reconsidering contracts. Daniel leaned back, which is exactly why we need experienced leadership. No offense, Ethan, but this company isn't a playground. I met his eyes. Neither is inheritance court. A few heads turned. Margaret stepped in smoothly. We're all family here, let's not make this personal. But it was personal. It always had been. Halfway through the meeting, Jonathan's assistant rushed in, whispering something into his ear. Jonathan stiffened. What is it? I asked. There's been a leak. Confidential documents, offshore accounts. Someone sent them to the press. The room erupted. Illegal accounts? Tax evasion? This could destroy us. I stood slowly. My father ran this empire for 40 years without being destroyed. If someone thinks they can scare me out in 48 hours, they don't know me. Daniel smiled thinly. Or maybe they know you very well. That night, I went to my father's penthouse alone. The place smelled like leather, whiskey, and control. Everything was exactly where he left it. No warmth, no photos, no memories, except one locked door at the end of the hallway. I found the key in his desk. Inside was a small room, a private office, and a safe. Inside the safe were files, old ones, medical reports, photos, and one document that made my knees go weak. My mother's name. Cause of death? Undetermined. Notes. Case closed under influence. I felt sick. My mother hadn't died from illness. She'd been silenced. And my father knew. The next page was worse. Names, payments, dates. Margaret's name appeared twice, Daniel's once. I finally understood the real reason my father left me everything. He wasn't rewarding me. He was protecting the truth and daring me to survive it. My phone rang. Unknown number again. This time, a voice message. Next time, it won't be documents. It'll be blood. I stared out at the city lights. $1 billion under my control. Enemies in my house and ghosts in my blood. I whispered to the empty room, "All right, Dad, let's finish this." And somewhere deep inside, I felt the war truly begin. The sound of the bullets still echoed in my head the next morning. Bulletproof glass or not, the message was clear. Someone wanted me scared. Someone wanted me dead. I stood in front of the shattered window, watching security replace the glass as if nothing had happened. Money makes even danger look routine. Jonathan arrived just after sunrise. His tie was crooked, his eyes tired. "This wasn't random," he said. "The shooter knew your schedule, knew where you'd be standing." "Family?" I asked. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. At headquarters, the atmosphere had changed. Whispers followed me down the hall, fear mixed with respect. People start believing in you when they see blood nearby. During lunch, I received an encrypted email from an anonymous source. "Check the Zurich accounts. Ask who authorized the transfer 3 days before your father died." 3 days. I pulled the records. One transfer stood out. $47 million moved through a shell company and back into a private trust. Authorized by Daniel Cole. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Daniel hadn't just been angry about the will, he'd been preparing for my father's death. That evening I confronted him at the penthouse. He was calm, too calm. "You're accusing me now?" he laughed. "Careful, little brother. Paranoia doesn't look good on a chairman." I placed the documents on the table. His smile faded for half a second, long enough. "That money," he said slowly, "was insurance." "Against what?" I asked. "Against you." The truth landed harder than the bullet. Before I could respond, Margaret walked in. "You shouldn't be fighting," she said softly. "This family has already lost enough." I looked at her, really looked. The perfect posture, the controlled voice, the woman my mother had feared. "My mother was murdered," I said. Silence. Margaret didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "Some truths destroy more than they save." That night, my car was forced off the road. 2 vehicles boxed me in on the bridge. Tires screamed, metal crashed, the world spun. When everything stopped, my driver was unconscious, blood on his forehead, and the back door opened. A man leaned in, gun pressed to my ribs. "Last warning," he whispered. I smiled, because in that moment, I understood exactly what my father had wanted. They didn't fear my money, they feared what I knew, and I wasn't walking away. I wasn't stepping aside. I was going to burn this empire down if that's what it took to expose the truth. As the sirens approached, I whispered to myself, "1 year, Dad. I'll finish what you started." The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and lies. My driver survived, barely. The police called it a hit and run, unknown assailants, no suspects. Money makes investigations slow when the wrong people are involved. I sat beside the bed for a long time, watching the machines breathe for him, thinking about how close I'd come, not just to death, but to understanding the rules of this game. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was about control. When I left the hospital, Jonathan was waiting. "There's something you need to see," he said, "and I should have shown you earlier." We drove to a private storage facility my father owned under a false name. Inside was a secure room, no cameras, no windows, just a table, a safe, and a hard drive. "This is Richard Cole's contingency," Jonathan said. "He recorded everything." The videos were dated over 10 years. My father stared into the camera, older but sharp. "If I'm dead," he said on screen, "it means someone close to me decided power was worth more than blood." I watched in silence. He spoke about illegal arms deals blocked, politicians bribed, partners eliminated financially. Then he named names. Margaret, Daniel, 2 senators, 1 federal judge, and then my mother. "She found out," my father said quietly. "They couldn't risk her talking. I tried to protect her and failed." My hands were shaking. She was poisoned slowly, hospitalized, declared sick. I let it happen because exposing the truth then would have destroyed everything, including Ethan. I hated him in that moment and understood him in the same breath. The next video ended with a warning. "They will try to break you. They will try to turn you into me. Don't let them." That same night, the news broke. Daniel Cole found dead in his apartment, apparent suicide. I stared at the screen. I knew better. Margaret called me minutes later, her voice calm, controlled. "This is a tragedy," she said. "We need to stand united." I realized then, Daniel wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn, and now he was gone. At the funeral, Margaret cried, real tears, or perfect acting, I couldn't tell. Sophia stood beside me, whispering, "Be careful, you're next." That night, someone broke into the penthouse. Nothing stolen, just one thing left behind on my desk. A photograph. My mother, holding me as a child, with a red circle drawn around her face, and 3 words written in ink. She talked. I crushed the photo in my fist. Whatever lines still existed between right and wrong, I crossed it in that moment. I ordered a private investigation. No law enforcement, no paper trail. I used my father's old contacts, the ones he never wanted me to know. If Margaret wanted a war, I would give her one. And this time, I wouldn't hesitate. I woke before dawn, heart still pounding from a nightmare that felt too much like reality. The penthouse was silent, but I didn't trust silence anymore. It never meant peace in this family. It meant a storm was coming. I called Sophia first. She answered, her voice low, tense. "Ethan, you shouldn't be out of the office this early," she said. "I need your help," I said. "I can't do this alone anymore. Margaret isn't hiding anything. She's moving pieces while I sit here guessing." There was a long pause. Then, "I'm with you," she whispered. "But be careful. Some lines once crossed, you can't uncross." I didn't argue. She understood, finally, that this was no longer just a corporate fight. This was survival. By 7 a.m., I was in my father's old private war room, hidden beneath the main office. There were monitors, servers, encrypted drives, and a single folder labeled, "If Ethan Wins." I opened it. Inside, every contract, every bank account, every hidden partner, and most importantly, a list of people who had tried to kill my father or had motive to kill me. Margaret's name was at the top. Directly beneath it, a list of phone numbers, coded messages, and one set of coordinates. I grabbed Sophia and we drove out of Manhattan, heading for the place marked on the list, a remote estate upstate. The estate looked abandoned from the outside, but cameras hidden in the trees betrayed its true purpose. Someone had been watching, waiting. Inside, the mansion was dark, silent, and cold. Dust covered furniture, but it smelled faintly of expensive perfume and cigar smoke, Margaret's signature. In the main hall, a single envelope sat on a marble table, my name written in her perfect hand. I opened it. Inside, a simple message. "Congratulations, you're finally awake. But remember, Ethan, waking up doesn't mean surviving. Step wrong, and the Empire dies with you. M." Sophia froze. She's here, somewhere. I didn't answer. I just turned toward the shadows, heart hammering, every instinct screaming danger. A slow clap echoed through the hall. "Bravo, Ethan. You finally figured out the first step. But this is only the beginning." She emerged from the darkness, flawless, composed, deadly. I noticed the faint bulge of a gun under her coat. "I don't have time for games," I said. "Either you come clean or I take everything from you." She smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. "Oh, I've been coming clean for years, sweetheart. That's exactly why you're here. The Empire doesn't belong to you yet. It belongs to me, the one who's been surviving longer than anyone else." I stepped closer. "You've killed before. You've lied before. You've manipulated everyone around you. But this time, you won't win." Margaret tilted her head, eyes glinting. "We'll see. After all, the first rule of this game is never let anyone see the board until it's too late." I glanced at Sophia. She nodded, ever so slightly. We were ready. And in that moment, I realized the game had changed. No more waiting, no more hiding. The first trap was set, and this time, it was my turn to strike. Outside, the city continued, unaware that in a secluded mansion upstate, a war had officially begun, and only one side would walk away with the billion-dollar legacy.
Margaret didn't move immediately. She let the silence stretch, like she was measuring my fear. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Every bullet, every threat, every betrayal had steeled me. "Do you really think you can just walk in here and take what's mine?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but every word dripped with venom. "I already have," I said, slowly circling her. "You just don't realize it yet." Sophia stayed close behind me, scanning the shadows. Her hand hovered over the pistol I had given her, just in case. Margaret smirked at the gesture. "You think a child can outplay me?" she said. "I've controlled this empire longer than you've been alive. I've destroyed people like you before breakfast." I stopped walking and stared at her. "Then maybe it's time someone destroyed you first." Before she could react, I pressed a button on the table. Instantly, the lights flickered on. Hidden cameras around the room revealed their feeds on the monitors. Margaret's security team approaching from outside, armed and ready. She froze. "What?" "They've been watching you for weeks," I said. "Every move you made, every message, every bribe, they were all tracked. You've been the hunter, but now you're the prey." Her smile vanished. For the first time, I saw uncertainty, and that was all I needed. Sophia moved silently behind Margaret. With a swift motion, she grabbed Margaret's wrist, twisting it so the gun fell with a loud clatter. Margaret cursed, but didn't fight back aggressively yet. She was smart, calculating. I stepped forward, keeping my eyes locked on her. "You wanted a war," I said. "Here it is. But know this empire isn't about your survival anymore. It's about the truth." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Truth? You don't know the half of it. You've barely scratched the surface." I leaned closer. "Then you'll tell me everything, now." She laughed softly, a sound that made the hair on my arm stand on end. "You think I'm scared? I've survived decades of treachery, assassination attempts, corporate wars. You're a child playing in a grown-up's world." I smiled, cold and steady. "Maybe, but I'm the child with the billion-dollar gun pointed right at you." Her breathing became heavier. I could see the tension in her jaw. She weighed her options, and then, finally, she spoke. "Fine," she said. "You want everything? You want to know the truth about your mother, about Daniel, about me?" I nodded. "All of it," I said. She leaned back, defeated for now. "Then listen carefully. This isn't just about greed. It's about power. And power is all that matters to this family. Your mother found out what I was capable of, and she paid the price. Daniel, He was weak, predictable. He didn't deserve anything except to be eliminated. And you, she paused, her eyes locking on mine. You are the only one who can survive because you're the only one I didn't underestimate. Silence filled the room. Sophia's eyes widened, but I stayed calm. You'll need to make a choice soon, Ethan. Trust no one. Not me, not your sister, not even your father's legacy. The minute you think you've won, the game changes. And in that moment, I realized she was right. The game had changed, but now I was no longer just a player. I was a strategist. I stepped back, letting her regain her composure, and said simply, "Then let's play." The first round was over. Margaret had survived, but her control was slipping, and I finally knew one thing for certain. She had underestimated me. From that day on, nothing would ever be the same. The real war for the billion-dollar inheritance had begun, and this time, I wasn't going to lose.
The mansion was quiet that night, but the silence was deceiving. Every shadow felt alive, every corner a potential trap. Margaret had survived our confrontation, but I knew she wouldn't sit back and wait. She was too clever for that. I called Sophia into the study. "We need a plan," I said. "Margaret won't give up. She'll strike again, and next time, she won't hold back." Sophia nodded. "We set the first trap tonight," she whispered. "She thinks she's untouchable. Let's make her question that." We worked quickly. Using my father's old security networks and some of my own resources, we planted surveillance, tracked potential escape routes, and set subtle alarms. Every detail mattered. Every second could mean life or death. Hours later, as midnight approached, the first move came. A call from an unknown number, automated and distorted. "Your sister has been taken. Step outside alone if you want her alive." I didn't panic. I didn't hesitate. I knew better than to fall for something so obvious, but I had to act like I did. Sophia was safe in the study, hidden behind reinforced doors, watching the monitors. I grabbed my father's old briefcase, loaded with encrypted drives and documents. This was my bait. Outside, the driveway was empty except for a single black SUV. Its engine hummed, lights off, shadows blending into the night. I stepped out, holding the briefcase in plain sight. A figure emerged, tall, lean, dressed in black. Margaret. "Clever," she said, voice smooth, almost seductive in its danger, but predictable. I smirked. Predictable? Maybe, but effective. She raised her hand slightly, revealing a pistol tucked beneath her coat. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pressed a hidden button in my palm. Lights flashed from every corner, cameras illuminated, and her team of mercenaries appeared from hidden positions. Margaret's eyes widened, the first sign of real fear I had seen from Margaret. "You set a trap," she said, voice sharp, "but I don't lose that easily." I smiled coldly. "No, but you underestimate me, and that's always fatal." Before she could react, Sophia triggered the second layer of our plan. Smoke canisters filled the driveway, disorienting the mercenaries and giving us leverage. Margaret cursed, trying to regain control, but her movements were slower, more cautious. I stepped closer. "Your moves are always 3 steps ahead until you're 4 steps behind," I said. "Now tell me everything, every hidden account, every ally, every threat, or this empire burns tonight." Margaret's eyes flickered, weighing her options. She was proud, powerful, and dangerous, but she had been forced into my game. Finally, she spoke, each word measured. "Fine, but know this, Ethan. You think you're ready for the truth? You've only seen the surface. Once it comes out, there's no going back." I leaned closer. "Good, because I'm ready to see it all." And in that moment,
I realized the first deadly round of the inheritance war had ended, but the real battle was only beginning. Outside, the city slept, oblivious to the billion-dollar empire cracking at its foundations, a war between blood and power raging silently in the shadows.
The next morning, the skyline of Manhattan looked the same, calm and indifferent, but I knew better. The empire was bleeding quietly, and every leak, every whisper was a blade aimed straight at me. Margaret's attack outside the mansion was just the beginning. She had allies I didn't even know existed. I sat in my father's old war room, the monitors alive with real-time data. Stock prices had begun to fluctuate wildly. Coal International's energy contracts were being questioned. Offshore accounts were suddenly flagged by authorities I had no control over. Every single disruption traced back to Margaret's hidden networks. Sophia hovered behind me, eyes scanning the monitors. "She's more connected than I thought," she muttered. "Every move we make, she anticipates it." I didn't answer immediately. I leaned back in my chair, fingers tapping against the table. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Margaret had been building her own empire under my father's nose. Every time he left a loophole, she had found a way through it. Every asset I thought was mine could be stripped away in seconds. Then the call came. Jonathan's voice, tense and panicked. "Ethan, it's your board. Someone's leaking company secrets to the press. Investors are pulling out, and the media, they're ready to label this as corporate mismanagement. You need to act now." I closed my eyes. The attacks weren't just physical anymore. They were strategic, designed to cripple me financially and socially. And the hand behind it? Margaret. I devised a counter-strike immediately. Using encrypted drives from my father's contingency files, I exposed the shell companies Margaret had been hiding, traced every fraudulent transaction, and funneled evidence to our most loyal allies. Within hours, her network began to crumble. But it wasn't enough. Later that evening, Sophia discovered an email on Daniel's old corporate account, an email that chilled us both. It was a confession, but not from Daniel. It was from someone inside the board, someone who had been feeding Margaret information for years. Sophia's hands shook. It's Jonathan." My mind froze for a second. The man I trusted, my father's longtime lawyer and advisor, was working against me. Every plan, every warning, even the safety measures he supposedly provided, compromised. I confronted him immediately in the war room. His calm demeanor cracked slightly when I slammed the evidence on the table. "You betrayed me," I said, voice low, dangerous. "You were supposed to protect me, and you've been feeding her everything for months." Jonathan's eyes didn't flinch. "I didn't betray anyone. I followed your father's ultimate plan. He knew Margaret would try this. He knew you'd need a lesson in survival. I was ensuring you'd earn it." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "A lesson in survival? You're trying to kill me slowly." Jonathan said nothing. His silence was an admission. That night, a new threat arrived. A black SUV circled the penthouse twice before vanishing. Surveillance footage revealed 3 masked men attempting to break in while we slept. They failed, but it was a warning. Margaret's reach had grown far beyond what I had imagined. Sophia looked at me, pale. "Ethan, she's not just playing with money anymore. She's playing with lives." I clenched my fists. "Then we'll fight with lives too. I won't stop. Not until she's exposed, not until this empire is truly mine, and not until the truth about my father and my mother is finally revealed." Somewhere deep in the city, Margaret watched. I could feel it, and I knew her next move would be lethal. The first major life-or-death cliffhanger had arrived, and by dawn, the rules of this game would be rewritten forever. By sunrise, I realized waiting was no longer an option. Margaret wasn't just a threat, she was a virus, spreading through the empire, corrupting everything she touched. If I didn't strike first, she would finish the job she started years ago. I mobilized the resources my father left me. Every encrypted contact, every offshore account, every private server in his hidden network was suddenly at my command. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control, survival, and revenge. Sophia stayed by my side, her presence a silent anchor. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice tight. "Once we start, there's no turning back." I nodded. "We've already crossed the point of no return. If we don't act now, we'll be buried by her before sunrise tomorrow." Our first target was Margaret's private communication network, encrypted phones, hidden emails, secure banking lines. Using the same tactics my father had trained me in, we infiltrated her system, mapping out every ally, every mercenary, every financial move. Within hours, I had compiled a detailed dossier of everyone who was helping her. Then came the message I've been waiting for. Jonathan, the man I had trusted, contacted me directly. "Ethan, it's time you see the truth. Your father, he left clues about his death. You need to find them before she does." I already knew Jonathan was dangerous, but now I realized he was the final puzzle piece. He wasn't just a betrayer, he was a guide in his own twisted way. Following his directions, Sophia and I found a hidden compartment in my father's old private safe. Inside were files, documents, and a journal, handwritten by Richard Cole himself. The entries detailed the final months of his life, the people he had feared, and the secret deals he had made to protect me. And then I found it, a name I hadn't expected: Daniel Cole. Not as a pawn, not as a fool, as a man whose death had been orchestrated, manipulated by Margaret to trigger chaos. He hadn't acted alone. He had been a piece in her plan from the start. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Everything, Daniel's death, the stock manipulations, the assassination attempts, was part of a strategy to force me into a corner, make me vulnerable, and see if I was capable of surviving. The next call came from Margaret herself. "I see you found my little gifts," she said, voice smooth but lethal. "Do you know what happens when a child thinks he can play with fire?" "I do," I replied calmly, "and I also know how fire spreads. You've underestimated me the last time." That night, she struck again. A sniper had been positioned outside the penthouse. The bullet missed me by inches, shattering the window behind me. Sophia screamed, and alarm screamed back. I realized then that Margaret's reach had no bounds, but neither did mine. I looked at Sophia. She's trying to scare us into mistakes, but she's just playing into our hands. By dawn, I had traced the sniper to one of Margaret's loyal mercenaries. Using surveillance, encrypted comms, and a bait I said earlier, we captured him alive. His confession revealed the entire chain of command, every hit, every theft, every betrayal. Margaret had built an army, but it wasn't invincible, and now I finally had the map to destroy it. As the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the city in gold, I realized one terrifying truth. This war wasn't about the billion-dollar inheritance anymore. It was about survival, it was about revenge, and it was about finally uncovering the truth about who had orchestrated my father's death. Margaret's empire was strong, but I was stronger, and the real war had only just begun. By mid-morning, I had made my move. The city outside continued in blissful ignorance, but inside my father's old network, a storm was gathering. Margaret's inner circle, her advisors, financial manipulators, and mercenaries were about to learn one critical lesson: the hunter can become the hunted. Sophia and I planned everything meticulously. We used every resource my father had left me, every loophole he had built into the empire. We traced communications, froze offshore accounts, and identified the exact locations of Margaret's closest allies. Then, one by one, we hit them. First, her financial strategist, a man responsible for laundering millions through shell companies. He was meeting a supposed client in a high-rise downtown. I made sure the client didn't exist. only a trap, a digital web leading straight back to him. Within hours, the authorities swooped in, and the man was arrested. The domino effect began. Next, we moved on to the mercenaries. They were tougher, but predictable. Using surveillance, decoys, and encrypted comms, we lured them into a remote warehouse where I confronted them directly. Fear replaced their confidence as I revealed the evidence against them, showing Margaret had been using them as expendable pawns. Then came the twist I hadn't anticipated. Jonathan called, voice tense. "Ethan, there's someone you didn't expect. Someone in your inner circle is working with her." My blood ran cold. I thought of every loyal employee, every board member, every friend who had been with me since day one. Who had betrayed me? The answer came within the hour. A trusted executive, one of my father's longtime aides, had been funneling information to Margaret, using our meetings as cover. I confronted him privately. His facade of loyalty crumbled instantly. "You don't understand," he stammered. "She promised power. She promised survival." "You promised me loyalty," I said, "and you just handed me a bullet I could have died from." He tried to defend himself, but I didn't give him a choice. He was out of the empire, removed from the board, exposed and humiliated. Margaret would hear about him soon. Finally, it was time for Margaret herself. We set the trap carefully, a secluded estate where she thought she was meeting a hidden investor. Instead, she walked into my net, surrounded by surveillance, security, and the evidence of every crime she had committed. She didn't flinch. "I should have expected this," she said calmly, "but it won't matter. Even if you trap me today, the empire will crumble if you try to take it." I stepped closer, eyes cold. The empire doesn't belong to her anymore. It belongs to the one who survives the truth. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And you think that's you?" I smiled slightly. "I know that's me." And in that moment, the first deadly confrontation between us ended. She wasn't defeated, not yet, but she was exposed, vulnerable, and for the first time, on the defensive. Outside, the city remained unaware of the war raging inside the walls of wealth and blood. But inside, one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same. Margaret's calm was fading, though she would never admit it. I could see it in the slight twitch of her jaw, the way her hands flexed under the table. She had always been ruthless, but now she realized she was no longer the one holding all the cards. That night, I returned to the war room alone. Sophia had insisted on watching the monitors from the penthouse, keeping an eye on any movement from Margaret's remaining allies. I opened my father's journal again, reading every line carefully. Hidden within the mundane details of corporate deals, I found a series of coded entries, encrypted messages my father had left, pointing to the real architect of the assassination attempts and the first attacks on me. It wasn't Margaret. It was someone closer, someone I had trusted. Jonathan. The realization hit like a sledgehammer. He had guided me, yes, but he had also manipulated Margaret, feeding her just enough to provoke chaos while keeping the true path hidden. My father had known, had anticipated this, and had left me the pieces to see the truth, but only if I survived long enough to decode them. I decrypted the final file. Video footage of my father, months before his death, confronting Jonathan in his private study. "If anything happens to me," Richard said, voice cold but controlled, "you will lead my son to the truth. He must survive the storm, Jonathan. He must." Jonathan looked remorseful, almost afraid. "I'll do whatever it takes, Richard. I'll protect him." "You'll test him. He must earn the empire. But be careful, he mustn't die before he understands everything. One wrong move and the war ends before it begins." I leaned back in my chair. The truth was worse than I imagined.
Every attack, every assassination attempt, every betrayal had been orchestrated by the man I trusted most, and the only reason I was alive was because my father had predicted it and prepared me for it. Sophia entered silently, her eyes wide. "What is it?" I handed her the decrypted files. "Jonathan, he's been testing us, testing me. He's been guiding Margaret, too, in his own way." Her face went pale. "You mean all this chaos he caused?" I nodded. Not entirely, but he made sure it escalated to this point, and now we know the truth. The next day, Margaret made her boldest move yet. She struck at the empire directly, an attack on the stock market, a coordinated leak of sensitive contracts, and a smear campaign designed to ruin my credibility publicly. It was fast, brutal, and precise. But this time, I was ready. Every move she made, we had already anticipated. Within hours, we countered, exposing her manipulations to the board, to investors, and to the media. Her network began to collapse, her allies turning against her. Then came the betrayal I hadn't expected. Sophia. She hesitated during one of the key board meetings, almost revealing a piece of our plan to Margaret. Her eyes met mine, full of fear, full of doubt. I don't know if I can do this," she whispered later, trembling. "If we go too far, what if we become like them?" I took her hands in mine. "Sophia, this isn't about becoming like them. It's about finishing what my father started. Margaret has taken lives, destroyed trust, and manipulated everyone. We can't let her win. Not now, not ever." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and finally understood that in this game, hesitation could be fatal. That night, I prepared for the next phase. Margaret had been cornered, but she was still dangerous. She would strike again, and this time, the battlefield would move beyond the boardroom, beyond the stock market, beyond the city itself. I realized something terrifying. The war for the billion-dollar inheritance was no longer just about money. It was about survival, about legacy, about finally uncovering every secret, every betrayal, every hidden truth my father had left behind. And by the time dawn broke, I knew one thing for certain. This war would not end until only one coal remained standing. By the time the city was waking, I had already mobilized my forces. The penthouse war room was alive with monitors, encrypted lines, and satellite feeds, tracking every move Margaret's remaining allies made. She was desperate now, more dangerous than ever. Desperation made people unpredictable, and unpredictable people made mistakes. I called Sophia over. "This is it," I said. "Tonight we set the final trap. If she wants to play one last round, she'll step right into it." Sophia's hands trembled slightly, but she nodded. "Are we ready for this? There's no going back, Ethan." "I know, and that's exactly why we're going to win." We planted decoy assets, fake contracts, dummy accounts, and a false investor meeting in an abandoned warehouse. Every encrypted signal, every tip, every bait was designed to lure Margaret out. Hours later, just after midnight, she appeared. Margaret walked in confidently, dressed impeccably, with 2 bodyguards in tow, but she didn't realize she had already walked into a trap we controlled entirely. "Ethan," she said, voice calm, eyes calculating, "you've done well to corner me, but the question is, can you finish this?" I stepped forward slowly, my gaze unwavering. "This isn't about finishing you, Margaret. It's about revealing the truth. Everything you've hidden, everything you've manipulated, it ends tonight." She smirked. "The truth? You think the truth will save you?" Before she could act, we triggered the surveillance network. Every camera, every microphone, every motion detector we had planted came alive. Her bodyguards were surrounded. Backup teams blocked all exits, and finally, the evidence we had collected over the past weeks was sent simultaneously to the authorities, the media, and key investors. Her smirk faltered. Fear touched her eyes for the first time. You set this up," she whispered. "Yes," I said calmly, "and now you'll answer for every move you've made."
Then the real revelation came. The first assassination attempt on me months ago wasn't actually meant to kill me. It was a distraction. Margaret had used it to test my father's contingency plans, to gauge how quickly I could respond, and to measure the loyalty of everyone around me. Everything was connected. Daniel's death, the sniper outside the penthouse, the stolen files, the financial leaks. Margaret had orchestrated it all, but I had been ready. And then came the final piece of the puzzle, my father's last recorded message, revealed by Jonathan. I leave everything to Ethan, not just because he is my son, but because he can survive what I could not. Margaret will test him, Daniel will guide him, and every move you make, Ethan, will determine who the Cole legacy truly belongs to. If you fail, everything dies, but if you succeed, the empire and the truth will be yours. I let the words sink in. The first 12 parts of this war had all led to this moment. Margaret's empire was crumbling around her. Her allies were exposed, her plans foiled, and for the first time, she was completely vulnerable. Sophia glanced at me, whispering, "This is it. Final move?" I nodded. Final move. And in the shadows of that abandoned warehouse, with the city lights far behind us, the real confrontation began. The moment that would decide the survival of the billion-dollar inheritance, the fate of the Cole family, and the final truths about my father's death.
The warehouse was silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Every step echoed, every shadow seemed alive. Margaret stood at the far end, her posture perfect, eyes sharp, and lips curled into a defiant smirk. She looked like she had already won, but I knew better. "You're persistent, Ethan," she said. "I almost admire it, but persistence isn't enough to survive what's coming." I didn't respond. Instead, I activated the last part of my plan. The doors clicked shut behind her, sealing the room. Security cameras I had planted weeks ago illuminated the warehouse, giving me every angle. Every exit she might use was blocked. Every ally she trusted was either captured or neutralized. "This empire belongs to me," she said, stepping forward, hands slightly raised, hiding the pistol beneath her coat. "You still don't understand that. Money is power. Power is control. You can't take it from me." I smirked. "You're right, I can't take it from you, but I can expose it, and exposure is the ultimate power." She froze. I pressed a button on the table. Instantly, the entire building's secure feeds were live-streamed to investors, board members, and law enforcement. Every shady deal, every offshore account, every secret meeting she had conducted in the past decade was now visible to the world. Margaret's face paled for the first time in my presence. You wouldn't dare." "I already did, and now it's over." Her last desperate move came next. She reached for the gun, but Sophia, hidden in the shadows, was faster. In a fluid motion, she disarmed Margaret and pressed her against the wall. "You lose," I said softly, walking toward her. "Not because you weren't dangerous, but because you underestimated me. You underestimated the man my father raised me to be." Margaret's eyes burned with fury, but she knew it. The empire she had tried to control for years was slipping from her hands, and there was nothing left to fight with. Then, in a final revelation, she spoke. "You think you've won, but your father, he knew everything. He planned this, and you're just a pawn in his game too." I froze for a moment, then I smiled. "Maybe, but I'm the pawn who finally learned to move like a king." She said nothing more. The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret was defeated, but alive, a calculated mercy. She would live to see the empire crumble publicly, and the law take what was rightfully mine. Outside, the first rays of dawn crept through the warehouse windows. I looked at Sophia. "It's done. The war is over." She shook her head slightly. "No, Ethan, the war is just ending for her. For us, the empire, the truth, it's just beginning." I knew she was right.
There were still secrets buried in the foundations of Coal International, still enemies who had survived in the shadows, still questions about my father's final days that had yet to be answered. But one thing was certain: for the first time, the empire was truly mine. And for the first time, I felt the weight of every betrayal, every death, every secret my father had left behind, because now it was my turn to decide the fate of the Coal legacy.
The days that followed were tense, almost surreal. Margaret was confined, her empire collapsing piece by piece under the weight of the evidence we had exposed. Investors withdrew, media stories shredded her reputation, and every hidden account she controlled was frozen. Yet, she remained alive, watching, scheming, always dangerous, always calculating. I spent the nights in the war room, going through my father's files again and again. Every document, every journal entry, every encrypted note led to one inescapable truth. Richard Cole's death had not been an accident. It had been orchestrated. And the mastermind behind it had been closer to home than I ever expected. Jonathan. I summoned him to the penthouse. His usual calm demeanor was gone. He looked uneasy. "Why now?" he asked, trying to mask his fear. "Because I know the truth," I said quietly, "about my father, about Daniel, about every attempt on my life. You knew more than anyone, and you kept it hidden. Why?" He swallowed hard. "I did it to protect you. Margaret, she would have destroyed everything if I hadn't guided you subtly, step by step. Your father, he left instructions for you, but he needed someone to make sure you survived long enough to follow them." I stepped closer, eyes sharp. "You call this protection? You manipulated deaths, betrayals, and attacks, all to test me? My father's blood, my mother's death, was this your idea of guidance?" Jonathan's face went pale. I didn't. I only followed his instructions." I shook my head. "Instructions? You created the storm. You let Margaret orchestrate it, and now it's time for the truth to end. Who killed my father, Jonathan? Was it Margaret, or was it you?" Silence. Then he exhaled, defeated. "It was a combination. Margaret made the final move. Poison. Hospital. But your father, he knew it was coming. I tried to delay it, but by the time I acted, it was too late. I did what I could to leave you alive, and to leave you everything." I felt a cold fury settle over me. The man I trusted most had been both protector and executioner, and now the final pieces of the puzzle were before me. That night, I confronted Margaret in her secured penthouse room. She sat calmly, hands clasped, still defiant. "I see you've uncovered the truth. Do you know what that means?" "Yes," I replied. "It means the war is over. You lose, and every secret you've hidden, every life you've endangered, every betrayal will come to light." She smirked. "And if I die, everything you've built could collapse. You're a king of ashes, Ethan." I smiled. "No, I'm a king of truth." Margaret's eyes flickered, realizing that she had been outmaneuvered at every turn. The evidence we had gathered, combined with Jonathan's confession and my father's files, left her no path to power, no path to revenge. As dawn broke over Manhattan, I stood by the window of the penthouse, looking out at the city that had been both battlefield and prize. Coal International was mine. The billion-dollar inheritance, the empire of secrets, lies, and betrayals. It was finally under my control. But more than that, I knew the truth about my father, about my mother, about Daniel, and about everyone who had tried to manipulate the course of my life. The war had been ruthless, bloody and merciless, but I had survived. And as I looked over the city, I realized one thing. The Cole legacy wasn't just wealth. It was power, it was truth, and it was mine.
The penthouse was quiet, but I knew it wouldn't last. Margaret never accepted defeat. Even with every ally captured, every account frozen, and every secret exposed, she still believed she could claw her way back. That was her fatal flaw. She was brought into the main hall, hands cuffed but still defiant. Her eyes met mine, full of fire, hatred, and a twisted kind of respect. "You think this is the end?" she asked. "You think controlling the empire gives you victory? You're a child playing with kings." I didn't flinch. "No, Margaret, I'm the king now, and you're just a footnote in the story my father started." She laughed, low and dangerous. "You have no idea what you're about to unleash. Even now, the empire, it's built on lies, blood, and manipulation. One wrong move and it all collapses. You think you survived the storm, Ethan, but the storm hasn't even started." I stepped closer, calm, confident. "The storm is over. I've seen it, survived it, and I've uncovered every secret. Your moves, Jonathan's moves, Daniel's mistakes, it all ends here. The empire is mine, and the truth is mine." Sophia stood beside me, watching carefully. She had been my anchor through every betrayal, every assassination attempt, every dark secret. Together, we had dismantled Margaret's network piece by piece. Now she had nowhere to run. Margaret's final move came quickly, a small vial she had hidden in her coat. She hurled it toward the table. I recognized it instantly, a potent poison, fast-acting. But I had anticipated this. The table was already rigged with a containment field, neutralizing the chemical instantly. Margaret's eyes widened in shock. You planned for this?" she whispered, disbelief cracking her composure. I nodded. "Yes, every step, every threat, every lie you tried to weave, I saw it coming. And now, your empire ends. But I'll make one final promise. You won't die tonight. You'll live to see every truth revealed, every crime exposed, every betrayal made public. That's your punishment." Margaret's defiance faltered, replaced with something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Not just for herself, but for the legacy she had tried to manipulate. She realized the empire she had sought to control would never be hers. Not now, not ever. I turned to Jonathan, standing quietly behind me. "You guided her, yes. You tested me. But now it's time for the empire to stand on truth, not manipulation." Jonathan bowed his head. "I understand, Ethan. You've surpassed what your father envisioned. He would be proud." I allowed myself a rare, brief smile. "Then let's finish this." Margaret was escorted away, her remaining assets frozen, her influence destroyed, her secrets laid bare for the world to see. The media exposed every fraudulent deal, every hidden account, every assassination plot. Investors regained confidence, the empire stabilized, and for the first time, Cole International was truly mine. Standing alone in the war room, looking over the city, I felt the weight of everything. My father's death, my mother's secrets, Daniel's betrayal, Margaret's schemes, and Jonathan's manipulations. Every challenge, every test had forged me into something stronger, sharper, and unbreakable. Sophia joined me, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It's done," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "The empire is ours, but more importantly, the truth is ours. Every secret is revealed, every betrayal accounted for, and finally, the Cole legacy is mine to lead." Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the war that had raged in the shadows. But inside, in the quiet of the penthouse, I knew one truth above all. Survival, power, and truth had a cost. I had paid it, and I had won. The billion-dollar inheritance was no longer a shadow of betrayal. It was a legacy of strength, of strategy, and of truth. And I, Ethan Cole, was its rightful heir. The war was over. But the empire would endure forever.